Senior Technical Engineer and Instructor, and thank you for joining us today. Today's topic, anything new. We're talking about the trends for the upcoming year, 2022, if you can imagine we're here already, and what we have to look forward to. There's a lot of changes and things that have happened over the last year or two. How is that going to impact your business? What is it going to mean for you as an administrator or an employee, whether you're working in the office or out of the office? How does all of this going to impact what's going to happen and where things are going to go? And probably most importantly, what everyone ever asks, how am I going to be successful, both personally and for my business? What is going to help me to reach my goals and to be successful? And we looked at a lot of information to help us talk about these topics, and we came up. I think I got over 30, and I whittled it down to about 15. So give us a little bit of time in case anyone had any questions. We'll have a little free time to space in our presentation to entertain questions in the chat. So feel free to enter those in, and we will get around to those as we talk about these different topics. So let's go ahead and talk about what we have. First off, big thanks to Clio for helping us with the content for our webinar today. They had a technology trends for 2022. They had a report on their blog that went into a lot of these details, and we'll have a link on our YouTube channel that you'll be able to click on and take you directly to it, that I highly encourage you to take a look at. And you can get more details, even more than what we're going to be talking about, because we're just going to highlight 15 or so of the many more that may impact you or you may be interested in. So let's go ahead and get into our first one. Our first one here has to deal with the adapting of everything digital. I mean, this is not a big revelation, but as you can imagine, working in the legal industry specifically, and there are others too, but legal specifically, where sometimes we can be a little slow to adopt new technology based on what the patterns have been, or we've always done things this way or that way. And Ben Patterson from Strategic Partnerships at Google had this to say when it came to adopting things digitally. It said, embracing digital and meeting clients where they are searching was a key point. And then he said this, he says, you have to be discoverable and reachable on the tools such as Google My Business to be able to be productive and successful. And that's very, very true. So this is not just searching on the internet. You want to make sure that you're paying attention to things like Twitter. So if you have a Twitter account, keep it fresh and active and current. Do you have a LinkedIn account? Is it up to date? Are you providing content for it? Having stale areas like that isn't going to be very productive. So you need to think about what you're producing and what information you're providing so that you can stay on top of things and embrace whatever digital means are available that your clients are interested in. Here's another one, and I don't think this one's going to be a big surprise for anybody. I mean, we've always focused on the client experience, but the key point for this year is to have even more focus on the client experience. And I think, people have understood over the course of the last few years, they've taken a very patient approach to working with people that are working in different locations and backgrounds, in family environments. And even I'll just give you a personal example. I had to have a technical phone call with a Microsoft technical engineer. And this engineer happened to be in India. And as I'm talking with her, I can hear her little girl coming up to her in the background, asking her about her homework or to take a look at something. And, it was very non-Microsoft to hear that type of interaction behind the scenes. So who you're talking with was a real person, not just someone in a call center. But the client experience goes beyond just that type of emotion that might come from a phone call. The The report that Clio had a note from Joseph Jenkins, the head of legal growth and Podium, and he said this: consumers are choosing convenient experiences, meaning that if there's a choice between two companies to pick from, if one company has a more convenient experience and way to communicate and work with them, they're going to choose that method because the experience is easier and more focused on them. So you can think about things. Can I schedule a call or meeting online from my website? Is it easy to view and pay my invoices online? Do I accept mobile payments like Apple Pay, Cash App, Venmo, etc.? These are all things that clients and people are going to look for to help them with their experience. Here's another one. Kind of goes along with what we were just talking about, but in just a slightly different way, elevating our communication. Now, how do we do that? Well, we're basically setting the bar higher on how we communicate. Nicole Braddock, the founder and CEO of Theory and Principle, said that if we haven't already, we need to find new ways to engage with current and prospective clients. Agreed. In what way? Well, she says from sales all the way through invoicing. So you could think of things such as, do you have an automated response for things like if someone signs up for more info, do they get an automated response? Do they get automated follow-ups? Do they get someone calling them back? Is there something for signing up for a webinar or a podcast? Even paying an invoice and getting an email and having an acknowledgement for those types of things. Elevating that bar all the way through the process is going to be a key part of moving forward and what our clients are going to be expecting from us. So that always takes us down to talking about invoicing and paying things and automated responses. Obviously, a lot of us are going to be thinking about, okay, well, that's a lot of admin work. So who am I going to hire to do that? Well, that's why this comes into play. How do we automate those admin tasks? Gosh, I mean, if you talk to any admin person, they'll tell you that they're overwhelmed with the amount of duties that they are tasked with doing. This could be, managing client contacts. It could be managing the vendors that they work with. And then they have invoices and changes to invoices. And can you do invoices in a different way than everybody else? Or could you report this or that? There's a lot of things that go on. And many of those administrative tasks are manual. So we don't want to get bogged down in that type of work. And Lori Gonzalez, the CEO of Reina Corp, had this to say. She says, the legal industry remains bogged down by work performed by people that is better handled by good technology. Not just throwing technology at it. She says good technology. Any technology that changes the one-to-one model of lawyers to allow lawyers to serve a much larger market will be a game changer. And I think that works for any company, not just legal in itself. Trying to automate that administrative work so that it doesn't have to be a chore. What else? Well, we know over the past couple of years, courts have been trying to keep up with everything digital that we've been talking about. And it's been a struggle for all of them. But the good side, the light at the end of that tunnel, is that it's provided new ways to be able to communicate that I think a lot of people knew would work better in a lot of different situations and assist those that didn't have the means or the money to be able to travel or attend or appear in certain situations, that it's really assisted them in this situation. And Sarah Glassmeyer from Legal Innovation Enthusiast, she said this. She said, to keep an eye on the providers of digital interfaces, both with the legal professionals and the public. So this might be something you see actually in the courtroom. Or as she says, it's pushed many courts into online worlds that they didn't think they would ever be forced to do, such as online unemployment applications. Or you could probably think of a lot of other government whether federal or state venues that did not have an online option, but now do, have been kind of forced into that. Now, she had noted there's really just a few providers for those digital interfaces. So you can look for a lot of growth in that sector and reaching out to see more and who provides that. But we're definitely going to see more on that side of things. Now, what about the people that are working by remote? This is a subject that came up, and this was in Cleo's notes as well. And I thought that the title of this was very appropriate. Thoughtful and deliberate. Thoughtful and deliberate. What does that mean? Well, Debbie Foster from Affinity Consulting said this in Cleo's blog. They said, the opportunity now is to revisit the tools that firms are using. So we've already put into effect all these different things to do remote, to have things accessible. But she says this, to making the experience as good as or better than it was when everyone was in the office. So now that the initial push or crush to working by remote and everyone has to work by remote and no one's in the office, to now kind of a hybrid approach, now that things have kind of calmed down, how can we improve this? We know that it's not going to go anywhere. We know the benefits that it's provided. So how do we improve that? And think about, as you're doing that, how do we do that in a way that is thoughtful and deliberate, not at the breakneck pace that it was at the beginning of the pandemic. Here's another one that's definitely come out of the last 2 years, how to prioritize empathy in technology. Now, technology and empathy are not two things that go hand in hand. They're typically very polar opposite. Technology can very easily tend to be cold, uncaring, unloving, as it is. So how do you promote empathy in technology? Because the fact is that as attorneys or healthcare workers, anybody who's working with people, but especially in those particular areas, pretty much to be effective, you have to be on all the time, available all the time. And Kate Winkler, she's a CEO at Ruby. She said this. She says that you're trying to do all this, and she says, all while trying to manage your own life, right? Then she says, we've already seen an increase in firms investing in solutions that provide that human touch, and we expect to see more of it. But she says this, attorneys can't work 24/7, but websites and phone numbers do. So here's an example. She says, identifying a partner that can be there for your clients when you can't. Providing, and here's the key, that empathetic voice. And she said that's going to be a critical factor. So not just, hey, leave a voicemail. Hey, send us an email. Hey, you can leave your information here. No, having a voice at the other end of it. But of course, taking into account that you can't be that voice 24/7. You have a family and a life too. So use the technology, but make having empathy, providing a voice, a human touch to those things a priority so that it doesn't come off unloving and cold and unfeeling or uncaring, especially when you are in a particular industry that is a priority. What else? Document automation. You knew that this one was going to come up. We've talked about document automation for quite a bit in our webinars, but how can you improve your document automation? And we've seen so many times where there's been document management put into place, but not really document automation. They worry about the storage, but then they don't go very further past that. And Ed Walters, he's the CEO of Fastcase. He said this. He says, lawyers are already moving beyond wet ink signatures. Absolutely. I totally agree. You see the adoption of Adobe Sign, Right Signature, DocuSign is being used in many more places in courts and government agencies are allowing the use of those. There are still some that you have to have wet signatures just because the laws haven't kept up with the technology yet, but that's evolving. But then he says this, now they need to move beyond wet ink document preparation. Aha. So just as we've accepted using DocuSign and Write Signature and Adobe Sign for physical signatures, why can't we do the same with document automation so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel or type or wet inks create documents? You can look for things of that nature to expand and become more prevalent in 2022. Now, number 10 is really having to do with something that it really depends on the area that you're working with. And this is to continue to adopt new technology. So, some industries are really slow, some are really fast. You have just in a legal arena, you may have some firms that are almost what seems like bleeding edge, where they're all over technology. Many a times, honestly, you'll see that in smaller firms, boutique firms, because it's less overhead and it's easier for them to make sweeping changes than it is a larger firm. But nonetheless, keep up the adoption of technology. Don't get stagnant, because your clients are looking for the use of technology that they're accustomed to seeing in other things, that they're going to be looking to say, oh, well, do you have an app, or can I use this, or do you have that? And when you say no, they may not say anything. You're probably not going to lose them, but they may go, oh. And so you just kind of lost a few little points right there. You don't want to lose points. You want to gain them. So we want to see how we can have a positive impact in our clients and their lives with our staff by taking advantage of technology. And Jordan Couch, he's a partner at Practice Law. He said this. He says, we're going to begin seeing the positive impacts of the recent tidal wave of technology adoption over the last 2 years. That's been the case. And how court procedures and other legal events take place. So the lessons we've learned, let's don't lose them. Let's use them. Let's make use of those lessons and the history we've already made with the technology and how it's been used, and continue making changes and moving forward. And of course, if we're going to be moving forward with our technology, we want to try to make it easier for our clients. So how are you going to use it? What are you going to do? Well, the easiest way is what John Strohmeyer said. He's a proprietor of Strohmeyer Law PLC. He says the biggest gains will be made by lawyers who integrate technology with human service to deliver the easiest experience to their clients. So here you have what we had talked about before, that empathy. You see how that's kind of tying in with this. How do we provide that human touch through technology? Maybe automating things, but maintaining a human touch, that human content, and making it easy for their clients. That is what you're going to be looking for. How do we make it easier for our clients? Could that be with signatures? Could that be how quickly you get information to and from them? Those are things to think about and how you're doing that. And of course, if you're trying to get things to and from your clients, you're going to be communicating with them. So that's our next one, which is you're going to have to update your communication tools. Now, if you haven't already done this, the past 2 years have been crazy in the amount of communication tools that have been released and adopted. Others have tried to make what they've had to work in the new ways that people are wanting to work. But what it comes down to, you really need to modernize your office phone system. Get something that is flexible so that it can be used in or out of the office. It has options that will work on a physical phone or what they call a soft phone that works directly off your computer or your mobile phone. And even have something that would tie directly into your practice management software. Maybe even provide a way for your clients to email and text and that go into that platform as well, and to be able to communicate with them. Those are all things that people are expecting. A lot of these things are things that you've probably have heard about, that call centers have used for a long time. When someone calls in, it goes to their phone on their computer. It's a soft phone. It'll say, hey, this is where they're calling from. If they're in your system, it'll automatically bring up all their information. It's tied in together. But you can only do that if you modernize your communication methods. So look into that. Many of the VoIP phones that work across the internet, so they're not tied to a physical location. Many a times you'll find that the upgrade that you get for those can even save you money based on what you're using before. If you get rid of your old uh, telephone lines that you had dedicated to your phone system before, look into that. It's a great thing. We've had a webinar specifically on that you can refer back to get some more information on phone systems and conferencing. Now, when we talk about phones, we talked about practice management systems and tracking that information. And that's all going to lead down to another thing that's going to be a trend for 2022, which is really focusing on the profitability. Now, you may say, well, isn't everybody really focused on profitability? Yes, but what specifically do we mean when we say increase your focus on profitability? It means focusing on the data for performance tracking and profitability. Peggy Granuk, the founder of CPN Legal and helping lawyers manage their finances, she said this. She says, capturing data and building reports that identify what work is getting done, by whom, and how efficiently, so you can answer a question like this. You ready? How profitable is this practice area, or attorney, or paralegal, or secretary, etc., etc.? Many of you that are listening in have found that you're able to do a lot more with less. And that was just due to circumstances that came around. And it was surprising how much more you were able to do with less. And that's not a bad thing. That was good. But we want to capture the data and then turn that in and say, okay, how can we make that better? What did we learn from that? That is driving force. Are you using the best resources for your job? Do you have attorneys that are billing their time for things that lower billable hour people could or personnel could be doing? Those are things to keep track of that'll help you to be more profitable. But you need the right reports and the right data to be able to do that. Now, another subject that's going to be very popular, well, gosh, it's been popular, but it's been gaining popularity. Actually, I would say, but I think popularity would be the wrong word for it. It's by necessity. And what are we talking about? Cybersecurity. Yeah, we've all been there. It's not going anywhere. Matter of fact, if I would say almost every one of the clients that we take care of have come back to us and say, hey, the risk management department or our cyber insurance carrier have come back to us, and what used to be like a little one-page document they would fill out is now like a 15-page document of what are you doing, what are you not doing, who has this, who has that. It is very comprehensive. For example, there'll be questions on there now asking, do you do phishing exercises, email spam spoofing exercises to your employees or to your firm to help train them and also find out who the risk factors are and help them? That wasn't on there before. And there were very few firms that did that because they did it on their own as part of trying to mitigate risk. Now it's being asked because if you don't, it increases your premium. If you do, it decreases your premium. It's a factor now. So staying on top of that, what does all that mean? It means that it's not just an IT decision that has to be made. It really is a decision that everyone is involved with. For especially our smaller firms, obviously you're going to be involved with all the decisions, but larger firms, yeah, every attorney, secretary, paralegal, and staff member has to be actively involved with cybersecurity. And especially as our work is going to transition to more and more things online and virtual, we just have to take a more active role in the security. And that's exactly what Alicia King Cole of King Cole Law, she said, is that as attorneys, she says we have to take a more active role in the security of our firms and our clients' confidential information. Very, very true. Well, what does that come to next? We talked just briefly, we mentioned it, video conferencing. It's not going anywhere. It's getting more and more, not just acceptable, but it's becoming pretty predominant where you're going to see this in a lot of different venues, and it's just going to increase. It's not going to be anywhere. So what can you do? Clio had this quote in their blog from Melanie Leonard from Streamlined Legal. And she says this: be prepared by streaming your video conference scheduling to auto-populate and disseminate video conference links to your clients and equip yourself with the tools to present yourself professionally on that call. So do you need a green screen behind you? Do you need some type of bannered information that it's standardized colors that match your letterhead so you have on your business cards and for your background and things in your video conferencing? Do you need better cameras or microphones to help you with that? Those are things to think about because you want to be presented as the professional that you are. And here's another one. I don't think anyone's going to be surprised by this. Subscriptions. What? Subscriptions? Yeah. Kimberly Bennett, she's the founder of Bennett Law. She said this: the trend will be towards a suite of tools or tech tools to support subscription-focused law firms and eliminate the hourly billing. What? Yeah, hourly billing, that's how we do everything. So yeah, this is a new trend. And you're going to see this more and more where there is subscription typed billing. And keep an eye out for that. Read the articles on it. It's very interesting. There are a number of firms already that have made this either their primary way of doing billing and practicing law based on subscriptions, or they have a hybrid approach where they're introducing it into their firm. Keep an eye on it. It's very interesting and could really change things up. And of course, that's going to tie back into the data and reporting. So now if you're not doing billable hours, how do you report on the productivity and the profitability reports? It all ties in, having a good billing system. And of course, Clio is there to help you with that. And then last but not least, this is one that is very close to my heart. You're not going to be surprised by this one, but it is a trend. Yeah. Learning and training. You all know that I have always been a big proponent of taking advantage of the tools that you have. And that plays right into where things have gone over the last 2 years. If you're trying to save money, we want to use what we have, but we want to be more effective. Then let's just learn to use the tools we already have. This could be as simple as Microsoft Office, Microsoft Word, reanalyzing that, your document management system that you've used for years, having a fresh pair of eyes on it and going over what features you have. And those features may not have been important 5 or 10 years ago, but now you're like, you know what? I think there might be something to that. Reinvest into that. Rather than turning to something new, a new software, a new hardware, take a good look at the tools you already have. And that's what Ivy Gray, he's the VP of Strategy and Business Development at WordRake. He said that. He says, rather than turning new tools and new experiences, firms will finally learn to get more value from the tools they have. And he mentioned specifically like case management systems in Microsoft Word. Very simple things, but can be very, very highly productive if the right training and learning is going on for those things. Well, those were our 15 things. That's a half an hour right there for just those 15 things. And there's much, much more that is going to be going on this year. So keep an eye out. If you have questions about what we've talked about, we encourage you to reach out to Clio on their blog, which I told you we'll have a little link for that in our YouTube channel underneath the video, so you can link directly to it. So you can read more about what others have said and what Clio has researched for 2022 trends. But as always, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. We appreciate you tuning in today, and we'll look forward to having you for our next Webinar Wednesday in February. Thank you very much. Bye.